want to make it so that my sprites can interact with each other instead. So for those of you guys right now, you can focus onto my screen and I'll give you a little show of my project right here. So first of all, I'd like to credit the Scratch team for this project. This is something that you can remix for those of you guys that remember how to do so. And so without further ado, let's begin. So as you can see right now, we have, let's make it a full screen so you can see properly. So right now we have a background here, and it's any random background. We have a ball and we have a paddle. So let's just take a look at how it works. So it starts off, the ball will bounce downwards, and then once it hits the paddle, it will come back up. The ball bounces on the edges of the screen of this whole Scratch interface screen. And when it hits this red part, the game will stop, signifying the end of the game. So today we'll be going through this project in which we will start off with a lesson of around 30 minutes where I will personally guide you through the interface from the design all the way to the codes. If you have any question about them, let us know on the Facebook Live. We will have instant help for you. And we will also host a 15-minute Q&A session, that's question and answers, afterwards, where you guys can feel free to ask anything you want, whether it's about the variations, what else you can learn, what else you can do on Scratch. If you have any problems with codes, do let us know. All right. So I'm hoping that you have your Scratch accounts up right now, because this is going to be the first part of the lesson, and it's starting now. So we've just talked about how this Pong project works. So take a close look at all the interactions of it, whether it is how the bar moves according to the mouse, how the ball bounces, where the ball actually bounces from when the green flag is clicked. These are all things that we will talk through later, but take a quick look at it right now. Awesome. So I want you guys to first of all go into the Scratch main page, where you're going to create your own project first. And over here, we're going to rename our project first of all. We're going to call it Pong, and possibly whatever your name would be. So I'm Mr. Mark, so I'll do Pong, Mr. Mark. So once again, thank you for all the first timers for coming, if there are any. So this is actually a video that is a continuation series of previous ones. So we might go through some of the things a bit quicker. If you have any technical issues or you can't find any blocks, do let us know on the Facebook Live and we will get back to you as soon as possible. So let us continue. And so right now we are on our Scratch interface. You can see, apart from renaming this project, I haven't done much to it. You can see the cat right now, which if you remember, we actually don't really need. So over here, we can click on the trash can and we can delete it. And instead we will need, so if you remember our 3 steps of creation, we have to start off by creating a world and then the characters before setting the codes, which are the rules of the project, which are the rules in which the sprites work as. So first things first, we're going to create a backdrop. Now, I remember at the beginning, we actually talked about the 4 different ways to create a backdrop, but we never really got into it. Today, we'll teach one called surprise. So surprise, much like its word, basically it's choosing a random backdrop where we just click it and any backdrop we can come up. So you guys can feel free to try it out. If you don't like it, you can always keep pressing surprise until you like one. But do remember, categorize your backdrops. Remember to clear them if you don't need them. But this is a way in which you can choose a backdrop if you're feeling if you're feeling a bit lazy and you just don't really mind what backdrop you use. So I pretty like this purple city here. I'm going to just stick with this. And then if you remember back into our project just now, we actually had a red line which signified the end. So that's where if the ball hits this red line, it will end the game. So what you can do is that you can go into backdrops and we're going to add a line at the bottom. So what's clear to do first of all is that you need to convert this whole original background here. We're going to convert it to vector. The reason why is that it allows us to add lines and shapes much more easily, and we can also separate them. And what I mean by this is that once it goes to bitmap, it's hard to really select different objects, but you can do so in the vector. So remember to convert to vector first. And then let's just make a red line for now, shall we? So I'm just going to make a line first, and I'm going to change the outline to, let's say 10 first, so I want to make it a bit thick. I'm going to change it to red, and I'm going to start off by drawing it at the bottom of the backdrop. Right here. So let's draw a perfect straight line, and if we want to edit it, remember after drawing it, you have to click on the mouse cursor first, and then we're going to click on the red line. So right now it's looking a bit thin. I'm not sure if the ball can really sense it. So I'm going to just make this around like 30 and see what happens. Good, so we see that the red line right now is much more thicker, and it will suit us a bit more. Possibly I can even make it even thicker. 40 would do well. And for some of you guys that are more creative, you can feel free to use the rectangles too. This rectangle section here. Do make sure that you get the fill and the outline part. Do make sure that you remember to change them, or you end up with something like this. All right, and if you have any questions about whether about drawing this backdrop or selecting it from surprise, let us know once again in the Facebook Live comments, and we will get our helpers on the way. So after the creation of the backdrop, we're going to look into the sprites, right? So remember, it's a ball. There's a ball that's bouncing around in the middle of the screen and all around it. So what we'll need first is a ball, right? Which we can actually choose directly as a sprite. And over here is just all the way up top, second left. Obviously, if you guys are more sporty, you can choose baseball, basketballs, beach balls, and even a soccer ball if you want. But for now, we're going to stick with just the normal ball. As many costume colors as you like, so you can select any color you want. Maybe not purple because it blends with the background a bit. So there's our ball. It's ready to be coded to, in which it can bounce across the backdrop and we can play with. We also need to add a paddle. So we can try look for it, right, in the sprites. And what you realize that there's a paddle right here where you can use. And if you're feeling like the paddle is perhaps a bit too, if you like to customize it by yourself, you can always go to the costumes and you can change how it looks, or you could directly paint it. So by painting here, what we can do is that we can hover our mouse above the sprite and we can click on this paintbrush here. This allows us to quite literally paint our own sprite. And here we can select, once again, we can select the line that we want, and then we can draw the paddle. Now make sure when you draw the paddle, make sure that it's aligned in the middle right here. So it has to go through the middle part, in the middle section here. All right, and now with the new Scratch update, you can actually make sure that your sprite is in the middle here, so it will automatically kind of shape itself, pull itself to the middle, once you hover a bit more above it. The paddle might be a bit too, so this is to your preference. You can make the paddle longer, shorter, thicker if you want. I personally would make it thicker because I want to make sure that the ball can bounce off it well. So I'm just gonna make this 20. Let's see where it goes. Nice. And I'm also gonna make it a bit shorter so it can be a bit more challenging, you know? There we go. And the color is up to your preference too. I can make it blue, green, yellow, whatever I want, and as should you also. So obviously one that stands out to the background would do very well. This could do, maybe green would do well too. So remember, just not as demonstrated just now, remember that you have to be clicking on the sprite before you drag its colors, or else it won't really change the colors. And once you're completely fine with your creation, you can feel free to rename your sprite as the paddle, right? Right there, paddle. And always remember, whenever you're done with something significant in your project, remember to save it. You don't want Scratch crashing on you. All right. So if you're feeling like you want to share, you can always screen cap your own project, show us what you're working with, and you can feel free to share it with us comment on our Facebook Live and share it with us. I'll go through some of them that I like in the question and answers maybe, and possibly give you guys a shout out too. All right, so I hope everyone is up to speed. Remember, you can always drive back on the Facebook Live if you missed a part, and always let us know if you're in technical issues. Once again. So we're going to continue right now into the blocks. So this is the part where we really kind of try to control the behavior of our sprites. So remember, today's key focus is actually making the sprites interact with one another. So if you guys haven't recognized by now, the sprite interaction we have here is firstly, what happens when the ball bounces on the paddle. And the second part is what happens when the ball hits the red part of the bottom of the screen. So creations of sprite interaction, they mainly revolve around two things. And it is mainly these two blocks, control block and sensing blocks. So we'll talk about these two blocks in, sorry. We'll talk about these two blocks in depth. And for now, we're going to continue on the control blocks first. So who remembers how does the paddle move? For those of you guys who remember, it is how we kind of make this paddle follow our mouse, but not completely at our mouse. We make it follow only the X position of our mouse. So what this means is that no matter how high or low my mouse drags, the paddle never follows how high or low it goes, but only whether it goes left or whether it goes right. So what we do here is that we can get the green flag clicked. And then we're going to find something called, we're going to go into motion, and we're going to set the X to our mouse pointer. So the way that we can do this is that we set the X first, and then we go to sensing, and we try to get the mouse X. So this kind of tells us the position of where our mouse would be. Now there's a slight problem with doing this. What you realize is that when the green flag is clicked, that is the only moment where the paddle follows the mouse. So you don't see the paddle following right now, right? So what to do actually is to go into control blocks, and we're to get a forever block. So in the control blocks, find a forever block and put it right on top of the set X to mouse X, so that you have the set X to mouse X block inside the forever block. Now, when we try right now, what you realize is that it works perfectly fine. So you can see it follows my mouse wherever it goes, right? So in order to ensure that our paddle doesn't accidentally pop up, or maybe if we accidentally drag it up, it will go back to its position, we're going to set the Y. So over here, we're going to set the Y downwards. So we're going to find a position where we prefer our paddle to be. So obviously not on top of the red. So maybe give it a bit of space. So drag to a position where height-wise you will like. Let's just make it 140 here. I like one. So minus 140 is fine for me. And I want to set my Y to minus 140 over here. I'm going to put it into my green flag click section here. Now you can feel free to put it in here. General rule of thumb is that whenever you position something, try to not put it forever or else it will stick there. But since we're only setting the Y, you can feel free to put it outside or inside of the forever block. Doesn't particularly matter in this occasion only. So right now, you see the paddle, even if we accidentally drag the paddle all the way up here, when we click the green flag to start the game, it will go back downwards and it will follow my mouse, the X position of my mouse. Awesome. All right. So remember, if you guys can see the blocks, let me know, and in the Facebook Live below. Now, after creating with the paddle here, I'm going to work on the ball now. So my paddle moves completely fine. I'm going to stop it a bit and want to work with the ball. So the first thing about the ball is that we're to recognize where our paddle will be when we begin. Remember, whenever we click on the green flag and the paddle will go to the left side of the screen. So if our ball instantly drops down from here, it will be quite disadvantaged to us. So what I'm going to do is that I have to make sure the ball kind of appears on the top of my left screen when I begin. So I'm going to grab a green flag click, and I'm going to set the X to this position right here. So those of you guys that have followed the YouTube videos, you remember Scratch has this awesome thing where it automatically sets the current coordinates for you. So you don't have to go ahead and change it. But in some occasions, it might not work. So make sure that you double check and make sure the ball coordinates on the interface section and the ones in your code interface are exactly the same. And after that, we're going to make sure we're going to make sure that it moves downwards. So by doing this, we have to set the direction. Now, by looking at direction, you can see exactly how you want it to move. So if you want to move a bit to the left, then it will show the direction you need. I want to move directly downwards. So I'm going to show, so 180 seems like the direction to move downwards. So I'm going to make it point in direction 180. And then I want the ball to be constantly moving too. So once again, I need a forever block. And I'm going to make it move, let's see. I'm going to make it move 10 steps for now. So I'm going to kind of feel out what the speed is like right now. So you can see the ball doesn't bounce yet, remember, because we haven't set the codes for it yet. But you will see that the ball moves at the speed and we can check whether we like it. If we like it, we leave it as it is. If we don't, we can make it faster or slower by increasing or decreasing this number here. So 15 would make it faster, see, and 5 would obviously be much slower. Now, one thing you realize is that if we, so I'm just going to change the direction here. You don't need to follow me. So I'm just going to change to maybe like minus 150. You will see the ball doesn't bounce yet, right? It just really just glides down on the left here, right? So we need to make sure that the ball bounces on the edge. And the way we do this is that we go into the motion blocks. Sorry, I'm set 180 here. I'm going to go into the motion blocks and I'm going to go here and set the if on edge bounce. So what this does is that the ball appears. If it ever gets on an edge, it will bounce. So just like this. So these are the blocks specifically for making the movements of the ball itself. And so as you can see, we've used a control block here, the forever block, which we mentioned before in the paddle. And we also use a range of motion blocks. Now, we're going to start now by really doing the interaction part where the ball hits the paddle and bounces, right? So we get a second green flag here. And we're going to get the forever block once again. Now, over here, I want to make sure that it does something when it bounces onto the paddle, right? So over here, what I do is that I get an if-then block. So if-then block really categorizes your situation. So for example, it will only do a specific action when the condition is met. We'll talk about if-then further in our Perfect Nomad Junior series. But for now, this is the block we need to make sure that the ball would, when the ball hits the paddle, it will bounce. So how do we do this? Let's go into sensing and let's go to the first point here called touching mouse pointer. Remember, before we use it, where in the paddle, we set an X to mouse X in order to sense where the mouse sensor is. Now we can directly get this touching mouse pointer here. And what I want to do is that I want to set this touching mouse pointer instead. I want to set it to touching paddle. I'm going to see what happens here. So by doing this, I can make sure that when the ball touches the paddle, something will happen and that it doesn't really just, go through my paddle and end the game, right? That's definitely not what we want. So over here, when it touches the paddle, I need to make sure that it bounces upwards, right? So what I have to do here is that I need to make it point in a direction upwards. Now let us try. What you can see is that if I do it just in point direction 90, the ball is just going to really bounce on my paddle and then go right. And the reason why is because my direction here is set at just go to 90, So what I can do here is I can set it to a range of different directions I can go in, but it has to be upwards. So I'm gonna go to direction here and I have to make sure that it goes in a range. So let's go around upwards, to the left is okay, to the right is okay, but I need to make sure that it's always different, right? So I go to operators, that's the green blocks right here, and I get a pick random out. So it'll say point direction, pick random 1 to 10 right now. I don't just want 1 to 10 because that's actually a really small range right here. I want to make this range big so that we can have more fun with it, right? So looking here, I see a direction 60 points, makes it go to the right a bit more, and then I can do the same by making it go left by -60. So I can set the range here to this direction, these directions over here. And the way I do it is that I just tell it to pick a random, I tell it to point in a random degree of -60 to 60. So now, when my ball bounces on the paddle, you can make sure that it will go to a different part. It's kind of slow right now. Let's just speed up a bit, shall we? Let's make it 15 here in the move 15 steps. Yep, whoa, there we go. And so one thing you realize, so right now we've almost completed the game, but you realize there's a condition where we haven't gone through yet, and it's what happens once we hit that red edge. So remember, the red part is for ending the game. So when the ball hits the very bottom at this red area, this signals that the game has to end. So you will realize, Mr. Mark, this red part is not a sprite. How can we touch it? If you look at the touching part, there's no part that says like, the red part, the backdrop, right? So what can we do? Well, you can actually grab the green flag again, and let's just almost make the same complete part of the touching paddle here. Except what we're gonna do is that this one, we're not gonna touch paddle. So once again, grab the green flag click, get the forever block, and then grab the if then. So the same as before. But this time, what you can do is that you can actually sense a color. So this is the way that sensing blocks work. So when you're with the ball, you can make it sense different things around. So remember the control block here with if then or forever, we set what happens with the behavior of the ball when it does different things. And with the sensing block, we can really ensure that the ball is able to sense what it touches and make the actions accordingly. So what I want here is the touching color. And remember here, I can actually, when I press this color part here, I can actually pick a color that I want to touch. So make sure over here, see, you can specifically make a color to your own wishes. I obviously want to pick this color red because I want to set a conditions that when it touches the color red, the whole game stops. Which is why I'm going to make sure that I put my mouse cursor all the way down to the red part here, and I'm going to click it. So what do I do now? I want to stop the game when the ball reaches the edge, right? This red edge here. So what I have to do is I have to go to control once again because I'm controlling how the ball behaves. And over here, I'm making it stop everything completely. The paddle stops, the ball stops, everything. So let's just see it right now. Let's just save it, remember, and let's just click the green flag. Whoa, that's a fail right there. All right, so our ball bounces completely fine. It bounces upwards. And yeah, you can see it go to a range of different directions. And once it hit the red part, the game completely ends. So that's your Pong recreation for today. And if you have any questions right now, we will be hosting a questions and answer session. So if you have any problems with the codes, if you have any problems with the lesson, perhaps you want to make some changes to the ball or like the colors of the ball, you want to make some effects, let us know and we're very happy to help you help your needs. So I can actually talk about different variations that you can do with this project. For example, over here, you want this to be a more, you want this whole project to be a bit more glamorous, for example. So a few things we can do here is that, we can like make the ball we can make the ball have like different costumes, right? So remember the ball here, it has different colors that it can turn into. So you can feel free, you can actually grab a green flag and you can, make it go forever. You can make it change to the next costume forever. And here you can have a really glamorous, so you have the ball that is going in very different shades of color right now. So looks a bit more fancy. If you want to, you can also make this into a changing color effect instead. So it looks a bit more classy. It looks a bit more, the color change looks a bit more natural. Well, more or less the same, but you can see that the shades don't really change that quickly. All right. And obviously you can also make it so that it doesn't really have to be a ball going falling down from the top to the bottom. It can equally be one where the paddle is on the left and it tries not to hit the left side of the screen. So you could do that too. You just have to change the backdrop. You can make it so the line appears over on this side instead, and the ball has to be directed to a different part once it hits the paddle. So that's all up to your creations where you can make. And feel free to also, you can also add a score. So whenever it touches the paddle, you can always add a score. We'll talk about this in the future a bit, but it belongs in the variables. So you can set something called score here, where you can make it change whenever it hits the paddle once. So over here, I'm going to set the score to 0 to begin with. And when it touches the paddle, you see, it can change the score by a bit. Awesome. So let us know how you felt about this lesson, what changes you made to it, whether you enjoyed this. We are very welcome to any suggestions you like to make. And any questions, feel free, just let us know right below and we will help you out instantly. And for those of you who are first timers here, once again, we also run a YouTube channel. So this is the first time we're doing a Scratch live webinar where you can view it live on Facebook. But we also have a YouTube account in which we upload daily content, and we also share different types of projects too. So So just a preview of what we're doing next week, actually. Let's see what we have. A lot of stuff we can work with. So next week we might be doing a little shooter game and also maybe a simplified flying game where actually this is for this one, it's gonna be fun. So what it is that it is a project where you have a very interactive series where you can see a whole animation where it looks like the bird is flying all the way to the right consistently. And this is where we also get in depth of how the point system works and what exactly it does and how we can fix it too. So this is a preview of next week's lessons. And also we'll look a bit more into the creation of different backgrounds and sprites. So right now you have learned about 3 different parts. Let's go back to Pong, Mr. Mark. You've learned about basically 3 different ways where you can choose a backdrop and a sprite. For example, I can choose a backdrop here by so I can choose one of the scratch generated backgrounds here. I can make it so that I can paint one, and I can make it so that it's a surprise, so it's a random one. So we learned about these 3 here. So I know many of you sometimes you guys don't want to make your own creations, right? So maybe some of you guys who like Pokemon would prefer to put Pokemon characters instead. Some of you guys might want an actual, footballer playing football here instead of a Pong machine right here. So this is for next week. We'll be teaching how to really upload a backdrop over here and upload it on sprites. And just any problems that you have with the upload and creation, we'll debug it, and then we'll make sure that you can have what you want on the Scratch interface to make the project that you want. So, Mr. Mark, and once again, this is the end of our Scratch Live webinar. Thanks for everyone for tuning in today. Remember, you can go into our YouTube channel for more content, and we'll be uploading daily from Monday to Friday. And there'll be Scratch and App Inventor projects for kids who are older and looking to make mobile apps. So feel free to go on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, make sure you get your coding feed, and we'll also see you live again next week on Friday. I hope you enjoyed the project. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep up with our daily content. I'm Mr. Mark, and this is Scratch Tutorials on Preface Nomad Jr.